Hello, and welcome to another meditation-based Seeds of Flourishing. So, in this particular exercise, we're going to be doing something quite different, and it's going to feature a whole load of different, I suppose you could call them techniques, some of which we may have covered before in previous relaxation and meditation episodes. Now, in order to do this, you will need some sort of physical object to start off with. In front of me, I've got it on the desk in front of me, you can hear me just putting it down there. I have a rather nice stone which I picked up while I was out walking at the weekend on one of the local trails. You can pick anything you like. I particularly picked this because it was a recent acquisition, and apart from me picking up that on the trail and all the things I might associate with finding this particular item, it's not an item that has any special meaning to me beyond that. It wasn't received as a gift. It's not something I've particularly gone out and bought. You can use items like that, but sometimes it's nice to have an object or an item which you can just admire and reflect on for itself. So for the first part of this exercise, we're going to simply pick up our object. You can stop this meditation now if you still need to go and find something, and then start it up from this point when you found it. So I'm going to start gently looking at this object, and I've got it in my hands, and I'm just looking at the different facets of the object. And as I make several rotations of this, there might be certain aspects of the object which are obviously facing me, and through my familiarity with the object as I rotate, the bits that aren't facing me, that are effectively out of view, come into view. And then as I rotate further, they go out of view. But the more I do this, the more I retain some idea of what that out of view perspective looks like as a phenomenon out in the world. So I'm going to spend a little bit longer now. I want to roughly spend about 2 minutes on each of these steps, and probably nearing that now with this rotation of the object. The idea of this first step is, or part of the idea, is to get enough familiarity with the object so that in a moment when we try and recreate the object in our mind, we can do that. And we're probably going to need to close our eyes to do that. With some objects, it's actually possible to visualize it in your head without closing your eyes. I sometimes find it easier to close my eyes. That way it's easier to maybe create or visualize in my head the object. So I'm going to do that now. I'm just going to put the object, this stone, back on the desk, and I'm going to close my eyes, and I'm going to start to visualize me rotating that object in space without touching it. So I'm just moving it around in my mind. It might be that in order to do that, I am imagining it being in my hands as I'm doing that. So I'm visualizing my hands as well. Maybe I've got quite a complicated environment. But equally, I could choose to just rotate it in blank space. Maybe I want to do that. But the important thing is to try and hold that image in your mind, but with sufficient complexity so that again you can rotate it, manipulate it, and see the facing side, and then as you rotate it, that disappear from view, and a new aspect come through. But because of the familiarity of the object, there's an expectation there. You know what you're going to see. But it's quite possible that maybe you're remembering something that as you do this you didn't first remember. Maybe the act of intention, the act of focus, if you like, on the object in your mind is making that clearer, making your attention better. Or maybe not. There's no right or wrong to any of this. It's another one of these exercises in noticing different perspectives. And with that in mind, we're going to go into a different perspective now. Let's imagine we're sitting in an empty cinema, or anywhere where we can imagine an image being projected up on the wall. And that image is the image of the same item. In my case, it's a stone, but it could be anything that you've picked. As long as it's the same object represented as an image on the screen, as a moving image. And what you're going to do is you're going to imagine you watching that item being manipulated in space in the same way. So it being rotated on that movie screen in the same way that you rotated it in your hands. But now you're from the perspective of watching it at a distance. It's not in your hands, and the item isn't just in your head, it's in your head as you watching it on a screen. But still, it's you watching it on a screen. So again, we'll just spend some time doing that. Sitting in our seat, looking at the movie, playing back the manipulation of the object. Again, rotating it or seeing it being rotated on the screen by whatever mechanism you choose, and noticing the facing side of the object and how its aspects disappear from view and reappear as that object is moved around on the screen. And now in the next part of this, what we're going to do, we're still in this cinema type scenario where we're sitting there and we're watching the screen with the object being rotated. But now we imagine there's a third party view in the cinema. So from somewhere in that cinema setup or room setup, we have now a third party view. And that third party view, that third party perspective, is looking from a certain position where it can see you, it can see the cinema screen, the projection screen, and it can see the item being rotated around on that screen. So let that image, that third person perspective just form in your head. A perspective from a position where you can see yourself sitting watching the screen, and at the same time you can also see what's on the screen being projected, that item, again in my case a rock, being manipulated, being moved around. And try and make that image as clear in your head as possible. Maybe you're actually starting to notice as well, in addition to the facets of the item, anything around it. Like maybe you're looking down from this third party perspective and notice that maybe you're fidgeting in your chair a little bit, or maybe you're dead still. And again, there's that item just moving around in space. But this time it's on the screen, and the perspective is from a position where you can both see the screen with the object on it and the viewer, the first person viewer of that setup. And for the final step, and you might want to pick the object back up again to do this, I'm going to imagine the point of view, the point of experience from that of the item. Now, we might be of the position that the item has no perspective. So there is nothing that is to be this object. But maybe for a little while, and for the purposes of this exercise, I'm going to suspend that disbelief and imagine that there is what it is like to be this object, in my case, what it is to be like this particular rock. And just imagine if there is any experience of that rock. Maybe I see it as a tactile experience, and I imagine myself from the rock's perspective strangely being moved around in space. But as that's happening, I can feel something, not sure what it is, on the outer surface, what I perceive as a rock, as where my rockness stops and my non-rockness starts. Or maybe that definition isn't quite so clear. And at this moment, as I'm doing that, I'm moving this object around in my hands, just trying to imagine that experience from the perspective of the object itself. And one thing that's just bounced into my head is, as a rock, do I have any concept of up or down? Or left or right? And then, just as I finish off now, I'm going to put the rock back on the desk and just spend a moment just taking a few gentle breaths and bring myself back to the environment that I'm in, just in case I've sort of drifted away a little bit into the world of rocks. Thanks once again for watching. Bye for now, and I will catch you in the next episode.